Hi, my name is George Grant. I'm a GGS Pro Technical Specialist with Griffin. Today we're going to be going over chrysanthemum crown budding, which is one of the most common problems mum growers deal with every season. We're going to be talking about why it occurs and some methods on dealing with it. One of the most popular methods is the use of a PGR with an active ingredient of ethifon. Now, when using ethifon, it's important to consider a few different things when applying it to make sure that we get the results that we're after. If you should have any additional questions, please feel free to contact us using the contact information below. It is important to understand as a grower, it is their responsibility to abide by all label laws. This includes approved application sites, rates, recommendations, instructions, and restrictions. Please note, labels do change on a continuous basis and can change sometimes unannounced. So it's important as you get new bottles in to follow and make sure that nothing has been changed to the label. Now, there are several products that will be discussed during this presentation. For ease of use, I'll be discussing the chemical Florel as our ethifon product. Now, however, there are various other PGR products that are just as appropriate or effective that are not mentioned in this presentation. For us to understand mum crown budding or mum premature budding, we have to understand the genetics of mums. So mums fall into the category of an obligate short day plant, meaning that they require long nights or short days to initiate flower. Now, this typically occurs from a natural photoperiod anywhere between July 5th to July 20th. Now, this can depend on the genetics of the mum as well as where you are in the United States. Now, depending on the variety, they can be more or less susceptible to crown budding. Essentially, what's occurring is that when mums are under a great deal of stress, which could include consecutive nights below 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, or other stresses such as inadequate irrigation or under fertilizing, they can actually premature bud. What this is it's actually a development of flowers prior to when their natural initiation occurs. This figure shows exactly what we're talking about. What occurred in this production cycle is that these mums put outside were exposed to cooler than ideal night temperatures, which once again is anything below 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit on a consecutive basis. They started developing crown buds, as you can see in the middle here. And you probably might notice is that the crown budding itself, the bud looks much different than what a typical mum bud develops later on in its life. What occurs though several weeks due to some sort of strategy is we can make sure that the vegetative growth around where the initial crown budding occurs outgrows and overshadows the crown budding that we see in the middle of the plant. Now, as you can imagine, a grower who's never experienced crown budding could be quite alarmed when they see it. Regardless if they fertilize optimally or irrigate optimally, they may not have control of the night temperatures, obviously if they're growing outside. So enough of this problem led to Jim Faust at Clemson University to experiment with a chemical called Florel, active ingredient ethifon, in trying to prevent and reduce the frequency of crown budding. As you can see in this figure, this is the experiment he pursued. He sprayed mums of the same variety with 3 different concentrations, ranging from 500, 750, and 1,000 parts per million. And he applied them at different intervals. At the top row, we can see that he applied it once, 3 weeks after being planted. In the second row, he applied it twice, once 2 weeks after planting, and then 3 weeks after planting. And in the bottom row, we can see he applied it at 1, 2, and 3 weeks after planting. So we're basically applying it once, twice, and 3 times. As you can see at the bottommost row, we can see that crown budding did not occur in any way. So based on this research, we found that 3 weekly applications of Florel after being planted generated the best success of preventing crown budding. Something else Dr. Faust found in this experiment was that applications of 750 or 1,000 parts per million of Florel weekly for 3 weeks had generally the same results. He found that applying 1,000 parts per million of Florel on mums could lead to some phytotoxicity, as you can see in this figure. And this makes sense. Ethifon, once absorbed by the plant, creates ethylene, a plant stress-inducing hormone. So one, it's important to note that when we're applying a ethifon-containing chemical, that plant should not be under stress. Also, based on this research, we can estimate that a application of 750 parts per million of Florel or another ethifon product applied weekly for 3 weeks after planting is most ideal and optimal for preventing crown budding. Dr. Faust's research at Clemson University really gave us insight into how to enhance mum production in general. For example, even in propagation, some genetics are predisposed to naturally initiating flower. We can get around this by applying Florel at 500 parts per million, leading to prevention of crown budding. Also, when we use Florel, it acts as a chemical pinch. Now, this is a misnomer because technically we're not really pinching the plant. Ethifon, the active ingredient of Florel, once absorbed by the plant, creates ethylene. Ethylene is a plant hormone that ultimately releases apical dominance. It causes axillary buds to branch out. We find that the more applications of Florel that we use, the more branching we get, and thus the more flowers we get as well. Multiple Florel applications also resulted in slightly longer rather than shorter stems. This makes a lot of sense. Take a poinsettia, for example, which comes a little bit later than mums. As you can see, the majority of a height on a poinsettia is in the vegetative stage. However, when we get to the flower, the buds and nodes are stacked upon each other and they're very close together. Florel and other ethifon-containing pesticides are unique in that they require a set of environmental and chemical conditions to make sure we have maximum efficacy. If we don't abide by these recommendations, it's possible we're not getting the maximum benefits that we've intended. For example, when we apply Florel, it doesn't translocate in the plant very well, and so the volume I'm applying needs to make sure that we're getting to a drip, as well as when I'm applying it needs to be uniform across the plant. We do not recommend using a surfactant-like capsule when using Florel, and when you're using Florel, as I've alluded to already, it is a stress-enhancing chemical ultimately because it turns into ethylene. We do not want to be applying this to a plant that's in some sort of stress, either heat, drought, fertilizer, etc. Also, research from Michigan State University by Lopez and Walters found that applying Florel above temperatures of 75 degrees or more drastically reduces its efficacy. So when applying, we recommend at least applying when the air temperature is 75 to 73 or lower. Also, it's important as applying this PGR that we have slow absorption. The way we do that is we can apply it either in the early morning or late evening hours of the day under high humidity, low light conditions. As we've talked about, Florel is considered a chemical pinch. This drastically reduces the labor required to mechanically pinch mum. Also, it's worth noting here that when you're trying to deal with a crown bud, it's better to actually use some sort of other method, such as using Florel, rather than trying to shear the crown bud off. We've found from experience that this actually does nothing positive for the plant and actually can be a detriment to its architecture. Now, when we're using Florel from a chemical standpoint, to make sure we have maximum efficacy, we need to make sure that our solution pH, our spray solution pH, is 5.0 or lower. Now, for some people who have high alkalinity water, where their pH is fairly high, they'll need to use either acid or some other piece of material to lower their solution pH. Sometimes people actually use distilled water or rainwater as to mix up their Florel solution. Florel by itself is very acidic, so if you're using relatively pure water at a pH of, let's say, close to 7, when you mix it in with Florel, it'll automatically bring it down to a optimal spray solution pH. As you can see in the rates here, we can form 500 parts per million and 700 parts per million as needed. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about Florel and how it can prevent and control crown budding in mums. Now let's talk about another strategy that we've found through experience to be effective. This is using fertilizer. Mums are considered to be heavy feeders, and a lack of fertilizer can actually promote crown budding early on in its development. We can utilize fertilizer by using excessive amounts of phosphorus. We know from Brian Whipker's research at NC State University that excessive phosphorus produces excessive stretching in the plant. We can use this concept temporarily to encourage lateral branching to outstretch the crown budding area of the plant. We can feed from 300 to 400 parts per million of nitrogen of a high phosphorus containing fertilizer such as 20-10-20 for temporarily for 7 to 10 days. In this figure here, you can closely see how crown budding occurred early in the plant, and then using an appropriate strategy, we were able to get the lateral buds to grow over and ultimately overshadow those crown buds. Now, once this mum fully flowers, you'll never see the crown bud, thus the consumer will never know it occurred. Thank you for your time today. If you should have any additional questions, please reach out to your local Griffin sales representative or the GGS Pro team using the contact information listed on the slide. Also, we greatly value your ideas, so if you should have any suggestions for future videos, please give us a call or email us. Thank you. Have a great day.